Would you like to learn how to make a nice match set grade of arrows? Come along, I'll show you. Hello and welcome back to the YouTube channel. MFJJ here with podiumarcher.com. Building myself a dozen antelope arrows. I'm using an RIP Extreme Velocity 350. Yes, I know this is a really light arrow and this is probably really irresponsible, but antelope are very easy and don't take a lot of penetration to pull it off, so I'm using the lightest thing I possibly can and kind of try to prove a point that you can actually kill stuff with really light things. But I like to make my arrows weigh the same and function the same, so I figured I'd go along my process with you so you can see how it works out. First off, I'm shooting lighted nocks. I'm going to shoot these halos, which are super easy to operate, really good retention on the string and a good nock fit, so I'm going to be putting these on here. So before I cut my arrows down, I'm going to go ahead and install nocks on all of them. So we'll start with that. Now these are already weight matched shafts, so I don't really need to weigh out each shaft because within the package they should all weigh within a grain. I'm not going to be using the stock insert that's on these, so try to make them just fall off in the package there. There we go. Alright, so let's pull all these nocks out. That's the one thing I didn't grab, a new pair of pliers. I'll put them in my mouth and pull them out. There we go. Alright. So we're going to pull these out. And if you're careful pulling these out, you could reuse them for something else. But if you reef on them, you probably want to just throw them out. But if you're gentle, you might be able to reuse them at a later date. All right, so that's 12. Now we need to open these buggers up and install them. They come with these little sleeves in here for different sizes of arrows, but I'm not using different sizes of arrows, so I just got to put the standard one in. There's a little bump on one side, and I'm going to line that up with the spine alignment mark when I put that in. Right there. Push down the counter. So be careful when you do that. If you push too hard, you can fold the ears over on the nock and mess it up. So now I'm going to do this 12 times. There's the indent, spine line. There you go. Okay, last one, and then Forrest was asking me how these worked because he hadn't actually seen it, so I'm going to show him. So this nock turns on, you seat it fully, and it turns on when it comes off the string, and then there's a little button on the side. If you can see that, I'm turning it different ways so you can try to see the little indent in there. And all you got to do is hold that down, put it back on your string, take it off, and let go. That's how you turn them off. They're pretty sweet. All right, so I got a sample arrow, set that over there, of my previous build. This is what we're trying to duplicate. This is a DCA Super Saber 2.0. They just came out with these. I've shot these with some mechanical broadheads so far, and they're actually very stable, so I'm going to go ahead and try to hunt with these, and I will try them with some fixed blade here coming up and see if it'll stabilize the fixed blade, but it definitely seems to stabilize the mechanical, and they weigh 6 grains each, so they're relatively light, and since I'm putting a lighted nock in the back, I try to save as much weight as I can here. But this is the length that we're trying to duplicate. So rather than go into a saw, let me grab a silver Sharpie. I like to just draw on it. Instead of trying to put one in the saw and put the other in the saw, I really prefer to just touch them to the ground evenly and draw a line. And then I always try to draw that line to where if I take that line completely, it runs into that distance. So I'm going to go ahead and set this saw up and trim one and then check it, and then if it's good, I'll cut the rest of them. That looks pretty close. Make sure that's seated good. That looks about right. Let's try one. Oh, now when you're cutting arrows, and I've said this a lot, you always roll into the blade. So you'll turn your arrow this direction, and you turn it slowly and very lightly. You don't just shove it into the blade and turn it. Like, let it cut through the outside couple layers of the arrow till it gets all the way through. It'll make a straighter cut, and then you don't have to use as much of a squaring device to get the end straight. So that was like 3 to 4 rotations around to cut that off, and these are really thin walled, so there's not a lot of material there. Let's see how this looks for length. How'd I do? That looks about exact. So we're going to go ahead and cut the rest of them then. I'm happy with that. I am going to lose a tiny bit when I square them anyway, so let's do that. Let's try to bounce them on the counter like that and get any dust out of the end. Now we'll square them. All right, I need to give all these a good squaring. Now all you're doing is trying to make sure the edge of this thing is straight. And that's all it really takes to do. Doesn't take much, just a little roll. If you made a good cut. If you make a real jagged cut, it'll take a lot. But if you cut them just like I showed you in the saw, they'll make a nice straight cut. It'll be super easy. We're going to link all the tools we used in these videos in the description down below. So if there's a tool that you saw that would be like, hey, yeah, that'll be great for me, there'll be a link in there to the website. This also ensures that you get a good square edge. So when you're putting a broadhead on, usually goes on really straight as long as you're buying a good broadhead. All right, so now we're going to use these true helical jigs. Love them or hate them. They work really well for getting a lot of twist on a fletch. And that's what we're going to use for these. These are the new DCA 2.0s. We like to use a primer pen on them. We've had better luck with them sticking overall. They do come with like alcohol wipes, so you can use those if you want. But the primer pen is just really user-friendly, really easy. We've already orientated our knock receivers so everything lines up with our spine alignment, so we should be able to make these really quick, really easy. And all we did was orientate this little mark right here with the indent here, and then turn that to where that vein is going to line up with that. So it'll be lined up with the spine align mark. You can argue with that's right, wrong, indifferent on where those are, but for today's purposes, we're just going to line them up with that. So all I do is wipe down the base of the vein with the primer pen. Make sure your primer pen is wet. If it's not got fluid on it, it's not cleaning anything. And I think this just takes off the base film from the extrusion that these come out of. And put a little bit of glue on each one. And I like to move it around with the tip. Some people like to use a Q-tip. That's up to you. And after I put glue on all three, make sure to push them back down where they're all the way down and seated. There you go. So they're even. That is what will get you on these fletching jigs. If you don't make sure those veins are all the way down when you go to close it, they'll be uneven when they come out of the receiver. Close that. Pull down on it. Grab your top, slide it over the top, push it back down. Now you can let that sit for a minute and then open up a single receiver and do it again. Or if you have two, which is kind of nice to get it done quicker. That feels wet still, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Go down, down, down. Now when you get to your first one to pull out, pull all these back straight. Relatively straight, don't see much for overspray. Probably got a good amount of glue on there. Everything looks stuck pretty good. So I'll leave that one there and load her up again. The last one. Got a little lube around it. So I like to see if there's any bubbling out of glue and wipe it down with a Q-tip, but if you put the right amount on it, it usually stays pretty clean. It takes a while to get used to how much to do. And then once those are all done, I like to use Fletch Type Platinum on the ends so there's not a bump in transition, so it comes off smooth. Because if you don't, a lot of times, if you nick something or snag something, leaf, piece of paper, something along those lines, there's a good chance that it'll peel the vein off. I found that when you do this, it's really hard to peel the vein off after it's been stuck. So those two things will get you good contact and good security. So what I'm doing here is building a little bit of a graph to weigh everything out and try to match everything up. And we're going to weigh out the arrows, the inserts, and the field points. Now, if you're going to hunt, you want to weigh out your broadheads, not your field points, because you want those to match more than anything. But we're going to start by using our grain scale here and start weighing out each arrow, and then I've got a little chart here to write down on. So that arrow is 214.5. 214.5. And put it back as the first arrow. Second arrow. 215. That's a lot of difference. Better check that again. Yep. 215.6. 215.6. All right, now we got to weigh each insert. These are prototype titaniums I had made because I'm trying to make the lightest thing I can make. And they're targeting 30 grains, so pretty close. Normally, traditionally, when you go through these, you'll find up to a grain difference. So it gives you a little bit of flexibility to make your components lighter or heavier. Be careful when you're doing this too. If you bust something out of its spot, you're gonna hate life because you're gonna have to weigh everything over again. But so, well, we only found 1/10 of a grain from one insert to another max. There's no more than that, so hopefully there's a little more variance in the field points to try to match this up. Now every time I've done this in the past with other componentry, this is the first time I've done it with my own. There's always been a decent amount of tolerance to where you can take these two that'll be heavier and put it with a lighter arrow to make them kind of weigh out the same. I'm a little concerned I'm not going to have enough variance to make that work in this video, but if you do weigh your stuff out and you're using most people's componentry, you're going to find some variance to match these things up. So we'll see what we find here. As much as I don't want to have my products have a lot of variance in them, I could use a lot of variance right now. 99.2. Oh, cool. There's some variance. 99.8. Nice. Now, I really like to do this personally with however many arrows I'm going to take hunting, which I usually try to do 24 arrows. So it usually gives you enough variance from 24 arrows, 24 components. I have had people go really nutty on this and weigh out each knock weigh out each vein, try to put them together that way. But I found most of the time that I've done this, I've been able to get it just out of the inserts and the points and not have to go through all the other weighing things. If you end up using componentry that's just really, really, really tight in tolerance, then you may have to go through and weigh nocks and weigh veins and put a couple tenths here and a couple tenths there together. But I've never found enough in veins for it to be relevant, to be honest. I don't think you're going to weigh more than a tenth in a vein. And that's asking a lot. And honestly, it's probably your scale varying a little bit more than it's likely a vein being off by a tenth, because that's just they only weigh 6 or 7 grains. I mean, there's not a lot to have there out of a molded product. 99.5. So we've got a little bit of variance here. We might be able to make it work. Most broadheads that I've weighed have more variance than this. So there is that. And depending on the inserts that you're using and how high they're putting them out in quantity, you'll get more variance than a tenth of a grain in inserts. I've found up to a full grain in inserts before, depending on whose and how many you go through. But if you had, you know, double the amount of components to go through, double the amount of arrows to go through, it's a lot easier to get them close. The last couple of years that I've built arrows, I've not been more than 3/10 off total from the lightest arrow to the heaviest arrow, just by weighing inserts and points. So it's not terribly hard. But because we have a grain off on the overall arrow, we're probably going to have a hard time matching it up. So we're probably going to be less than a half a grain total. 99.4. $99.5. $99.4. Okay, so now comes the fun little math part. So we'll try to make the heaviest component we can. So going through here, we got a 99.8, so that's this one, number 2. And then 29.9, number 1. We'll take those out and screw them together. Goes in just nice. And then we're going to take these and put it in the lightest arrow we can find. So that's 214.4, 2.5, 214, 2.12. Okay, so we're going to put it into number 12 and set it back down. So now we're going to take off number 1 and number 2 off the board and number 12. Then we're going to do it again. So we're going to find the next heaviest point we can, which I think is 99.5. So we'll grab number 3, 99.5, and another 29.9 insert, which is number 5. And then the next lightest arrow, which is number 11, I believe. Yep, 14.4. So that was number 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 3, and number 11. All right, 99.5, there's several of those, so we'll go down here to 6. I should probably do this as I pull them. Be easier for me here. 6, 29.9 is 6. And then 214.5 can be the next one. So that'll be arrow number 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Make sure you always put it back in order so you don't screw up your count. That's number 7. Next heaviest one will be 7. And I didn't mark off 6 or 7. 7 and 7 are also the same. So I can mark off that one, that one, that one, and number 1. All right, we've now taken all 12 of these arrows, matched them all up, made them as close as we can because our componentry is really tight, and marked off each one as we went. Now I'm going to use my little paper towel that I use to hold my inserts and points on to wipe my hot glue off, and we're going to glue these suckers in and see how good we did. All right, now we're going to hot glue these in. I really prefer to use a heat gun as opposed to a torch because it's a little more to control. So just set it on your counter, turn it on, pull your component out. I like to use these loop pliers because your point fits in there really easy. It's easy to hang on to so you don't get too hot on your hands. Get your glue heated up. starts to get a little soft, you can put some on there. Not quite there yet. Don't ever, ever, ever heat the arrow, okay? I'm trying to show you how to do this so you don't cause damage. For a long time, I did not recommend using hot glue because of people jacking up their own stuff. Twist it real good. And then just let it sit. Tip off the counter. Eventually it'll dry and you can peel it right off. So we'll do her again. When you look at it, you can kind of see it turn liquidy, just like that. It started moving. Twist, 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 twist. As long as you don't get it too hot, you don't really need to dunk it in water, but if you're concerned about it, a little cup of water, cool it right down. But you don't have to get hot glue very hot. This stuff that we use, it doesn't take that much to get it super warm. Get the component a little warm, get the glue a little warm. Wipe it on there a little bit, there you go. Put the component back in. Wait for it to turn a little liquidy. There you go. Twist, twist, twist. Let it cool. So you'll know when they're done when it's kind of doesn't stick to you anymore, and just push it off like that and little O-ring. All the glue's gone. Usually by the time you get done with your 12th, the first one's cool off enough you can pull it off. Those one's touched, but it just peels right off. It's easy peasy. And if you're really cheap, you could probably put it back in your little glue ball and reuse it if you want. Because it's still just hot glue. And I know I said you can just reuse it, and I'm cheap, so I'm putting it back in there. Let's see. Take a couple more of these off. Oh, don't waste it. There you go. A couple more of these off, and then weigh them out and see how we did. That one's already off. Over there. Now, there are a couple other things you can do to get them a little closer if you need to, but if you're within 3/4 tenths, even a half a grain, I doubt you can outshoot a half a grain, but some people might believe they can. One more, last one. This is the one I did last. So yeah, by the time I got to this one, it's cooled off enough it comes off. It's still sticking a little bit, but it doesn't burn you. Piece cake, nice and clean. All right, let's see how we did here. Make a little room. Oh, look at those, extra glue. 345.5. And yeah, I'm going to kill something with that. 345.4. 345.2. Well, that's weird. That one's really light. That's an oddity. Might be because I moved the scale. Hang on, let's see. Yeah, it's because I moved the scale. Let's start over. Nope. It's 345.5. 345.2. Dude, something's weird. Turn it off. 344.8. 344.7. It's close. There were two that came out really light. 344.9. 344.5. So with the exception of two, these are all within a half. 344.8. And the two that were light, I want to say is this one. Yeah, that's like really light. So I'm going to have to add some weight to that one. Yeah, probably want to add a little weight to that one. Check that one. We had two that ended up real light. Yeah. Outside of that, they're all 344.9 to 345, 3 or 4. So these two I'm going to end up doing. I don't have any with me right now, but I'm going to go to the store and buy some spray Fletch Lac, or not Fletch Lac, sorry, lacquer thinner. Not lacquer thinner. Oh my God. Spray lacquer. Sorry. Thank you. I'm going to pull the knockout, squirt it in the back, flick it out, and weigh it to add a little weight to these two arrows because they're a little too light. I need them within a half a grain, and these are about a grain off. Now, when I go to switch to broadheads, I may go through and do it all over again before I bother to do that and find my two heaviest broadheads and put them in these two arrows. But outside of that, these are all within less than a half a grain. Should be able to shoot those at any distance and not be able to tell a difference. Comment down below on what you think about this video and if this was helpful or if you learned anything from it. If you have questions, ideas for videos, please put that in there as well. Hey, like and subscribe. We appreciate your connection with us and being able to keep sending you information that hopefully makes you a smarter archer, because that's what we're trying to do. Appreciate you watching.